Yep, so you guessed it from the title of the video, we're going to be doing some rock molds. So what are you going to need for rock molds? Well, firstly, you're going to need some of these, some Woodland Scenics rubber molds, the latex molds. Now there are other ways of doing it. You can either cut into foam, or you can make your own molds out of latex. You can get some liquid latex from places like Hobbycraft and stuff like that. And using foil, you can create your own latex molds, or indeed using foil itself, you can kind of mold your own rock molds. But I tend to use these because you get some good details inside. Now I've got two sets. The first one being, I don't know if you can just see that, C1243, which are base rocks, which give me a good covering of cliffs and little outcrops there. And if I need to go back onto smaller pieces or embankments or anything like that, or rough pieces which I need to fit into the bigger pieces, I go to the C1233. Now what else are you going to need? Well, you're going to need some plaster. Now if you go by Woodland Scenics, they'll tell you to buy that hydrocal. Don't buy that hydrocal. It's a rip-off, it's a waste of money. Okay, mix your own plaster. What you need is fine casting plaster, okay? Or plaster of Paris, but I tend to use fine casting plaster because it gives that little bit more finer detail when you're actually putting the caster into the moulds. You're going to need some scales, a jug, a spoon, and some dishwasher, very liquid kind of stuff. So the first thing I do is I squirt some very liquid into the bowl and run the water. I then dunk the moulds straight into the water, making sure all that water gets inside. Get it nice and wet and soapy. And then let it drip off. Just rinse some of that suds out, because you don't want the suds inside, but you do want it kind of soapy. And on to the next step is you've got to follow the instructions. So this instructions is saying per 100 grams of plaster, you want 70 millilitres of water. So it's 100 to 70 ratio. Okay, and it says here that you've got to add the plaster to the water. So get your water, then add that plaster. And that is why you need the scale. So I'm going to be mixing up 250 grams of this casting plaster, which means it's just under 200 millilitres. Okay, so it's around 187. I've worked out. We've zeroed the scales. All we need to do now is pour in, using the spoon, casting plaster, so that the scales read 250. You can see the plaster already reacting with the water, so there's a thermic reaction going on. So that's near enough. Make sure you close the bag, you don't be spilling it. And now you need to mix it, making sure you get all the plaster. You've got around a 5 to 10 minute working time with this. So you should have plenty of time to actually get it mixed all the way. And it goes to the consistency of single cream. Now you probably think, surely that's not going to set. But it does. Because there's a thermic reaction going on there, it's actually getting quite warm. But that means it's working. And once you're happy that you've got it all mixed in, all the plaster mixed into the water, all along the sides, all along the bottom. That's when you need to get your rock moulds. Now your rock moulds are still wet. Okay, they need to be wet. Don't pour the plaster in when it's dry. I'll swap them around. Making sure that it's wet, and remember we put the soap, the dish soap, in the bowl before. That soap is going to act as a kind of catalyst, which will help the plaster pour properly into all the recesses and all the cracks, and it will also get rid of all the bubbles as well. So 250 grams worth of plaster, I've found, will adequately pour into all of these. Now what you can do is you can prop up some of the moulds. Because of the weight of the plaster, sometimes it bends over, so you can prop up some of the moulds from underneath, and then you can begin pouring. Now what I tend to do is pour in a little at first, just to see where it lies and where it settles, and then you can always go back and add a little more. Now you don't need to fill the moulds, you can fill them half full and you'll still gain that effect, and you'll get some variety in your rock moulds. And your rock moulds don't even need to be snapped off, pulled out in full. They can be snapped off again to give that variety to your layout. So now that you've filled your moulds, you can go back and top up all the other ones. And because you've still got that working time, it just adds to the plaster inside the mould. Make sure you scrape out all the plaster from the bottle, from the whatever you're mixing it in. And the plaster does self-level a certain amount. But you can always give it a lending hand. By giving it a gentle tap and shake from side to side. That also eliminates all the bubbles which may form. So you can give it a shake, all the bubbles will disappear. And then it's a case of leaving that for around half an hour to an hour to let it go off. They'll start hardening in around 10-15 minutes, but to remove them, give them at least an hour. So we'll come back in 1 hour's time. Is to clean your tools for next whilst time. These are drying. I thought I'd explain to you why I use these rock moulds. Now people might say this is £8 and that's £10, so 18 quid for 2 rock moulds. But the detail and the finesse you get from these compared to other methods is far greater with these. Plus, yes, it's £8 for that and £10 for that. But once you've bought it, it's not a case of throwing it away. As long as you look after it, clean it as soon as you get the rock moulds out, you can use them time and time again, and the finish that you get is excellent as long as you're using the right type of plaster. I'll put a link in the screen to where I got my plaster, but even that plaster is considerably cheaper than the hydrocal or the plaster mix that you get from Woodland Scenics, when it is essentially the same stuff. Now, if you went to a wholesaler's like a timber merchants or builders merchants, I'm sure you could pick up a 25 kilogram bag of fine casting powder, whether you need that much, for the same price as it would cost for hydrocal. If you look on the Hatton's website, a small tub of hydrocal is £11. Now, the fine casting plaster, which I've bought, is £4 off eBay, or £4.99 off eBay, and that's done loads of cliffs and rock edges, and I've still got loads left over. Whereas the hydrocal would probably only do 4 of these. It's only been 10 minutes, and these are already hard. So it's been 45 minutes. And you can hear that these are solid. They're not fully cured yet. There's at least 4 hours. I tend to leave them overnight just to make sure that they're fully cured. So let's see what we've got. All you need to do is, because the latex mould is quite flexible, is prise them open. And that's the kind of quality that you get. That's the kind of quality you get. Now, if I show you one that's been made before, this is an hour old, if you listen to this. It's quite a dull thud. Now, if I get one which is 2 or 3 days old, and that's fully cured, that's quite a thud, a low thud, and it still feels wet and damp and heavy. When you're getting that ring, that's when they're fully cured. Leave them to dry for at least 24 hours, and that's when you can start doing your painting. And I've made all these, and there's another sheet upstairs ready to go on my layout. The next step though, remember, like we did before, we've got to wash these. So thanks for watching. I hope you take some ideas on board. As I said, I personally wouldn't buy that hydrocal. It's not worth the money, and you can get the same kind of plaster for a fraction of the price and do a considerable amount more. You don't have to take my advice, but I haven't had any problems whatsoever with the fine casting plaster that I bought. As I said, completely cheaper than the Woodland Scenics Hydrocal. So until next time, thanks for tuning in. Alnahudy Central will be providing an update soon, and we've finally got some hills, hence why we've got some cliffs. So see you soon.